You remember the silence before you remember anything else. Not the peaceful kind of silence that comes before sleep. Not the kind that feels like a lullaby, soft and comforting. No. The silence of your childhood was heavy. It pressed against your chest, filling the room like a fog you couldn't escape. It wasn't soothing, it was suffocating. You lay in bed at night, eyes open, listening. The house creaked, the refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked on the wall. But the sound you wanted, the footsteps in the hallway, the gentle voice saying good night, the warmth of someone tucking in your blanket, never came. Other children grew up in homes filled with noise, laughter, chatter, arguments, the kind of sounds that meant life was happening around them. For you, the noise was replaced by absence. It was not that people weren't there. They were. Moving, living, talking, just not with you. Not to you. You were there, breathing the same air, but somehow invisible. This is the kind of silence that teaches you something long before you have the words to explain it. It teaches you that your feelings don't echo anywhere, that your voice disappears into the air, that the world keeps moving whether you are heard or not. And while silence looks harmless from the outside, for a child it is deafening. Because silence is not neutral. Silence is a message. It says, you do not matter enough to be spoken to be responded to be seen. You might have thought at the time that you were imagining it, that maybe you were just too sensitive, too needy, too much. But deep inside you knew. The silence was not an accident. It was the climate of your home. It was the emotional wallpaper of your childhood. And so you grew up in that quiet, teaching yourself how not to cry too loud, how not to expect too much, how to shrink your needs until they could fit into the invisible space between words. But here is the haunting truth. When a child is raised in silence, they learn to silence themselves. And when they grow up, the silence doesn't end just because the house has changed. The silence follows them. It lives inside their body, shaping how they speak, how they love, how they exist. The question is, when you are raised in silence, what kind of adult do you become? And at what cost? It always starts small. You cry in your crib, but no one comes. You tug at your parents' sleeve while they're on the phone, but they wave you away. You bring home a drawing from school, colors spilling off the page with excitement, and it gets left on the counter without a glance. At first you wait. Children always wait. You wait for the footsteps, the question, the smile. You wait for the silence to break. But the silence stretches. And eventually, something inside you shifts. You begin to learn a cruel lesson. Your feelings echo into a void. This is not the kind of wound people point to. There are no bruises, no raised voices, no slammed doors. From the outside, your family may even look fine. But what you experienced has a name. Psychologists call it childhood emotional neglect. It's the wound of absence, the pain of what didn't happen. No one leaned down to ask how you were really doing. No one reflected your joy back to you. No one noticed when sadness weighed on your shoulders. Instead of being mirrored, you became invisible. Instead of being comforted, you were left to comfort yourself. So you began reading the room instead of being read. You learned to watch the tiny shifts in your mother's tone, the heaviness in your father's footsteps, the way tension filled the air before an argument. Your nervous system turned into an emotional radar, always scanning, always alert, always on guard. And this is where silence does its deepest damage. It doesn't just leave you unheard, it forces you to become the one who listens even as a child. It turns you into the interpreter of moods, the keeper of unspoken rules. In some homes, this is called parentification, where the child becomes the adult before their time, carrying burdens they never should have carried. The rule of your household was unspoken but crystal clear. Do not disturb. Do not need too much. Do not expect too much. Do not break the silence. And so you began to bury parts of yourself. The playful child, the loud child, the needy child, they all went underground. You learned to adapt, to survive, to shape yourself into someone who could exist in that quiet without demanding more than was ever offered. The wound of silence is invisible. But it is deep. Because when your needs go unanswered long enough, you stop bringing them forward. And when you stop bringing them forward, you stop believing you have any to begin with. Children cannot live in a vacuum. When silence surrounds you, you have two choices: break it and risk rejection, or adapt to it and survive. Most children choose survival. And so did you. You began to shape yourself into what the silence demanded. If no one responded to your feelings, you stopped showing them. If no one celebrated your joy, you dimmed it. If love seemed conditional, you worked tirelessly to earn it. This adaptation can take many forms. Some children become invisible, quiet, careful, fading into the background so they don't make waves. Others become achievers, top grades, perfect behavior, endless accomplishments, hoping that success will buy them the attention silence refused to give. And still others become caretakers, watching over siblings, soothing parents, carrying responsibilities far too heavy for their small shoulders. And here's the paradox. The world often praises these survival roles. You're so mature. You're so independent. You never cause trouble. What sounds like compliments to outsiders is actually evidence of a wound. It means you've already abandoned pieces of yourself to keep others comfortable. You wore your silence like armor, but it wasn't strength, it was strategy. A way to belong without being noticed. A way to stay safe without being seen. But there is always a cost to survival. Every time you swallowed your words, you buried a little more of your authentic self. Every time you put on a smile while your chest ached, you sent another piece of truth underground. The child you were meant to be, loud, playful, messy, emotional, became the child you had to hide. And when you hide yourself long enough, the mask begins to feel real. You forget that it's a mask at all. You start to believe you are the quiet one, the perfect one, the dependable one. You forget there was ever another version of you, a freer version, a louder version, a truer version. This is the tragedy of adaptation. It saves you in childhood but imprisons you in adulthood. The silence outside turned into silence inside. And by surviving, you unknowingly built the very cage that now keeps you from living fully. The mask worked when you were small. But what happens when you grow up and realize you don't know how to take it off? The child who learned to survive in silence eventually becomes an adult. But the silence doesn't stay in the past. It follows you like a shadow, slipping into every corner of your life. You might struggle to speak your needs. When someone asks, "What do you want for dinner?" your mind goes blank. Not because you don't know, but because you were never trained to believe your wants mattered. You might freeze when someone asks how you feel. Emotions rise in your chest, but they hit a wall before reaching your lips. Expressing them feels unsafe, foreign, almost impossible. You might apologize for simply existing. Sorry becomes your favorite word. Sorry for asking, sorry for interrupting, sorry for needing space, sorry for being here at all. You might overthink every word in a text message, terrified of saying the wrong thing. You might replay conversations at night, haunted by imagined mistakes, hyper-aware of rejection. You might pour yourself into your work, driven by an invisible hunger. Achievements stack up, but none of them fill the silence. Each success whispers, maybe now they'll notice. But the recognition you crave never comes. You might find yourself drawn to partners who echo the silence of your past. Relationships where your voice is dismissed, where your needs are minimized, where you are once again invisible. Because even though it hurts, silence is familiar. And the nervous system craves the familiar even when it wounds you. You might. Each you might is not random. It is the rhythm of an invisible wound playing itself out in your adult life. On the outside, people may see you as competent, reliable, hardworking, even admirable. But inside, you carry the invisible grief of a child who was never truly heard. This grief shows up in subtle but powerful ways. Trust feels dangerous. Vulnerability feels like exposure. Love feels conditional. And joy feels fleeting, like a visitor you're not allowed to keep. This is the long-term cost of being raised in silence. It shapes your relationships, your career, your sense of self-worth. It makes you hypervigilant in a world that never feels safe, perfectionistic in a world that never feels satisfied, selfless in a world that never notices your sacrifice. And it leaves you with the haunting question: if no one ever truly listened to me, will I ever learn how to listen to myself? Why does a child stay silent? Why doesn't the child demand, scream, or insist until someone finally listens? The answer is both simple and devastating: survival. For a child, love is oxygen. Connection is life. Without it, the nervous system goes into panic. And so, if the cost of belonging is silence, the child will pay it. Again and again. You see, children will sacrifice anything for attachment, even themselves. They will give up their tears, their laughter, their voice, their truth. They will abandon their authenticity if it means they can keep the bond alive. Because for a child, losing authenticity feels painful. But losing connection feels deadly. And so you learned early, if I am quiet, they will keep me. If I demand nothing, I won't be pushed away. If I disappear into silence, at least I will not be abandoned. This is the deeper truth of your wound. You didn't choose silence because you were weak. You chose silence because you were loyal. Loyal to the bond, loyal to the family, loyal to the hope that maybe one day, if you behaved just right, love would finally arrive. But here's the gut punch: silence didn't just protect you. It reshaped you. The mask you put on to survive became the face you forgot was a mask. You grew up thinking your quietness was your personality when really, it was your shield. You mistook survival for identity. And even now, as an adult, part of you still believes, If I speak too loudly, I will lose them. If I show too much, I will be left alone. If I demand to be seen, I will be abandoned. This belief is not logical, but it is powerful. It's not in your head. It's in your nervous system, in your body, in the very cells that were trained in childhood silence. Here lies the heartbreak. The silence was never proof that you were unworthy. It was proof of your adaptability, your brilliance, your instinct to survive at any cost. But the very choice that once saved you, burying your voice, is the same choice that now keeps you from living fully. And so the question becomes, if you silenced yourself to belong, are you willing now to find your voice in order to become whole? This is the moment everything changes. For years, maybe decades, you have carried the belief that someone else would eventually hear you. That one day a partner, a friend, a mentor, a parent who finally woke up, would give you the words you always longed to hear. I see you. You matter. You are not invisible. But here is the hard truth. No one is coming to rescue the child you buried. No one is going to knock on your door and hand you the voice you lost. And while that realization can feel crushing, it is also the most powerful turning point of your life. Because if no one is coming, then the responsibility, and the power, rests in your hands. The silence you grew up in does not have to remain the silence you live in. But breaking it will not come from others giving you permission. It will come from you daring to give yourself what was withheld. This is where you step into the role of the reparenting adult, the one who shows up for the child you once were, the one who listens where no one listened, the one who speaks where no one spoke, the one who says finally with unwavering conviction, you matter. I hear you. I will not abandon you again. It is not about blaming your parents or rewriting the past. It is about reclaiming the present. About realizing that you no longer live in that childhood home, under those rules of silence. Today you hold the pen. Today you decide the script. And here is the paradox. The silence that once imprisoned you has also given you something rare, a deep sensitivity to voices, emotions, and atmospheres. What once was your survival skill can now become your gift, if you choose to use it consciously. The turning point is simple but not easy. You stop waiting. You stop hoping someone else will break the silence for you. You become the one who speaks. You become the one who listens. You become the one who finally says the words you needed to hear. The child in you was silenced, but the adult in you can speak. And that shift, from waiting to choosing, from silence to voice, is the moment your story transforms from tragedy into empowerment. Healing from silence does not begin with noise. It begins with acknowledgement. With turning inward and whispering to yourself what no one else ever said. I see you. I hear you. You matter. The first step is to ask the questions you were too young to form back then. What did I need that I never received? What words would have healed me if someone had spoken them? What silence hurt me the most? This is where inner child work begins. You go back, not in judgment, but in compassion. You picture the child you once were, small, quiet, waiting. And instead of leaving them in silence, you sit beside them. You become the parent they needed. You say the words that should have been said. But healing is not just about comfort. It is also about honesty. Silence buried more than your voice. It buried your anger, your grief, your longing. This is where shadow work comes in. Shadow work means uncovering the emotions you exiled. It means letting yourself feel what you were once forbidden to feel. It means facing the parts of you that say, I was hurt. I was neglected. I deserved more. It is not easy. The silence you lived in was a kind of training, a training to dismiss yourself. Undoing that takes time. Some days it feels like breaking stone with bare hands. But every time you name a feeling, every time you speak a truth out loud, you crack another piece of that stone apart. Healing also means learning new skills that silence never taught you. It means practicing saying what you want even if your voice shakes. It means letting others hear you even if it feels foreign. It means reclaiming joy, allowing yourself to laugh loudly, to cry freely, to exist without apology. And perhaps most of all, healing means forgiveness, not always for the people who failed you but for yourself. For the years you stayed quiet. For the times you abandoned your own needs. For the ways you still struggle. Because silence taught you survival, and survival was not weakness. It was brilliance. Now healing asks you to transform that brilliance into something new. Not just endurance but expression. Not just survival but aliveness. And step by step, word by word, you become the witness you always longed for. You were raised in silence. But silence is not the whole story. Because here you are, listening, reflecting, searching for words that were once denied you. That in itself is proof. The child may have been silenced, but the adult is still reaching. Still hungry for truth. Still alive. The arc of your story is not just tragedy. It is transformation. You began as a child surrounded by quiet that cut deeper than words. You learned to adapt, to wear masks to survive. You carried those masks into adulthood, mistaking them for your identity. But here now you have uncovered the deeper truth. The silence was never proof of your unworthiness. It was only proof of what was withheld from you. And that changes everything. Because if silence was learned, then voice can be learned too. If invisibility was imposed, then visibility can be reclaimed. You never had the childhood you deserved. But you still have the future you can create. A future where your voice is not just allowed, it is honored. A future where your needs are not dismissed, they are spoken and respected. A future where the silence that once imprisoned you becomes the silence you choose. Silence for peace, silence for reflection, silence that heals instead of harms. You are not doomed to repeat the past. You can break the cycle. You can be the parent to yourself that you never had. You can raise your own inner child with love, with words, with presence. And in doing so, you can also break the silence for the generations that come after you. This is your invitation. Do not wait. Do not hope that someone else will fill the silence. Step into it yourself. Speak the words. Write them. Sing them. Whisper them. Shout them. Whatever it takes, let your voice exist. Because it always should have. And remember this, you were never invisible. You were never unworthy. You were never broken. You were only silenced. And silence is not the end. It is only a beginning. So here's the reflection I leave with you. Even if you were raised in silence, your voice is waiting. And the world, your world, needs to hear it. If this resonated with you, share your story in the comments. Let your words live. Subscribe if you want to keep diving deeper into the hidden wounds and hidden strengths of the psyche. Because this channel, this space is here to remind you, you may have grown up in silence. But you don't have to live there anymore.